Greetings, subscribers! In the summer of 2025, I was at a bar in Brooklyn, New York called Lucky 13 Saloon, which is mainly a heavy metal bar, but also has a horror movie theme. Really fun place. There, I met an author of horror books who I believe to be up and coming. He was happy to let me interview him, and Lucky 13 was nice enough to let us record inside their venue. So with that, let's begin.
Hello, my name is Joseph Pesavento, and I'm a horror author. I've been self-publishing since 2021, and my first one was actually a story collection called Madman. But since then, I've kind of gone all over the place when it comes to horror subgenres. I wrote a zombie novel called Death Cleanse. I wrote a slasher novella called Hyde Cove. And then I did another collection which was alien-specific called Dead Planet. And then my most recent one, which came out last year, is called the Cathedral Dimension, and that's more of like a cosmic story meets a little bit of cult elements.
What first made you a fan of horror?
So I naturally stumbled upon horror when I was a kid going into video stores. You know, the back room was the restricted area, so when I was probably like 11 or 12, I got brave enough to go back there, and you know, some of the covers scared me, but when I was around 13 or 14, I was like, you know, let me try and watch one of these, and I immediately became obsessed. You know, like I was young enough where it was still taboo, but I was excited enough as like a young teen where I wanted to soak in a lot more, and then I went down the rabbit hole of the big ones, you know, like the Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw, and I immediately got hooked. And then it wasn't until college where I was, reading this stuff. I mean, naturally, I read things like Goosebumps when I was very young. There was a series called From the Black Lagoon, but it was from the kids' perspective of, you know, teachers and janitors and principals. They would be perceived as intimidating, but you know, when you finally met them, they were nice people. But it was a very kid-friendly thing to kind of also get you in the horror realm. So it was just like the very kid-friendly and PG-13 stuff that took me in, but the R-rated and all the blood-soaked stuff really just kept me there.
How did you get started with writing horror?
I just started doing short stories as a hobby. I didn't really think about too much of it. I come from a film background, so naturally I have written screenplays before. Right before the pandemic, I had been introduced to some horror authors, and I said, oh wow, there's actually a market for indie horror. You know, you hear about the big names, of course, and you see in bookstores, but going to horror conventions, I saw that there was a market for indie authors, and I started to really take it seriously when I was, you know, locked inside during the pandemic.
In simplest terms, what is your philosophy to writing effective horror?
Well, since I come from a film background, I think really soaking someone in early on and then maintaining that dread throughout. I think that some of my stories kind of have like a cinema tone to them where they pace like a movie, and they tend to kind of have the same structure. So I think having that specific background makes me want to kind of emulate that when I write horror, that I'm such a big cinema fan that when I write it, I wanted to emulate that, hey, I could visualize this on a screen.
You frequently appear at horror conventions. Please tell me a little about your experiences at them.
Well, before I started vending at horror conventions, I was a fan. I was going to them for numerous years before, and between the merchandise and the opportunity to meet someone that I'd seen on screen 10 years before, 20 years before, was so fascinating. So naturally, when I started to put my books out, I thought, you know, there's such a market for horror, and my books would fit perfectly at these conventions. So really just getting a table and then being able to not only interact with the vendors that are near me, I was also able to interact with some of the celebrities who were walking around. So being able to have the experience of sharing my work with someone I admired for decades before I even started writing really motivated me to keep doing it and to keep going to not only horror conventions that were very specific to something that interests me. For example, something like Living Dead Weekend, which takes place in the Monroeville Mall from Dawn of the Dead, really motivated me to keep going and, you know, not only be in the presence of a historic horror site, but I'm also talking to zombies who were children in this movie. So I get to leave that even more excited that, you know, I'm in horror holy land, and then I'm also going home to take that energy and just put it back in my writing and be that much better for the next book that's coming.
What are 3 of your favorite horror movies ever, and why?
The top 3, I would have to go with The Thing. I think The Thing encapsulates isolation, fear of the unknown, and really something that has never really been done before, obviously outside of the original, but I think the John Carpenter's The Thing really stands on its own, not only from a practical effects. I think it's the holy grail for practical effects, but it's also a film that really hits the nail on the head when it comes to alien horror and, you know, fearing the guy right next to you. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre comes to mind. Not only is that title so perfectly descriptive of the movie, but I think that's another one where, going as far back as the 70s, that movie hadn't been done before. That was the first time that teenagers were really put through that much terror in their lives. And ironically enough, that movie isn't very gory. So like a lot of it deals with off-screen horror, and it makes you imagine what is going on, and it really puts you in the psyche when she's experiencing this stuff at the dining table. And then as a whole, I would have to say my third would probably be one of the VHS franchise. I think they all bring something unique, but they're all, you know, little collections. So like one movie will have 4 short movies in it, and then the overall narrative that collects them. So like you get a lot of everything, you know, you get like a sampler platter for every movie, and each movie is unique in itself, but I would even say something like VHS 99 would stand out, or VHS 85, where, you know, they're even specific to the date that they came out, or VHS Beyond, which is alien specific. So you really get samples of everything, but they're all so unique, and you get a lot of dread, but you also get a lot of fun and creativity with them.
What are your thoughts on where the genre of horror is today? Where has it come and where is it going?
So for me, I have a lot of difficulty saying where it's going, but I am excited to say that there has been a renaissance in the last 5 to 10 years. You know, with the reboots, which we may not so much love, but the fact that we're getting them means a lot. I think that horror has always channeled a lot of taboos that most big genres haven't. You know, the LGBTQ community has been in horror, black communities have been in horror, and specifically they channel the hardships that those communities go through. So the fact that we're celebrating them, the fact that they're in the public eye, and the fact that they're much easier to make from a financial standpoint than, you know, these big blockbusters that we're seeing being pumped into the theaters. It's exciting that we're getting new things like Art the Clown. It's exciting that we're getting new things like Clown in a Cornfield. It's exciting that we're championing the genre and the stereotypes and the tropes, but we're also breaking new ground with things we've seen. You know, we wouldn't have Killer Clowns if it weren't for It or the ones from outer space. So the fact that we're getting more now just means that people are going to the theater and people are picking up the books and we're feeding it, and it's not slowing down. Horror fans are easily the biggest fans in the world, the most devoted fans in the world, and I'm excited that I'm one of them and that we can have a bigger presence with the explosion of the internet, with the explosion of more people in the theater seats, and more people at book signings and bookstores.
What's in the near future for Joseph Pesavento?
In the coming weeks, my 6th book, Our Family Home, will be releasing. The actual release date is pending, so stay tuned. And then I'm working on my 7th book, which is untitled right now, but I will be releasing a collection of stories that will pay tribute to one of my favorite franchises, which is the VHS franchise.
How can viewers follow you?
You can always follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Both are Joseph Pesavento Writes. I am on Facebook. You can find some of my updates on there. And then my website, josephpesavento.com, for all my updates. And then I do have a newsletter, which is on Substack, just my name, Joseph Pesavento. So you can find me there and keep up with all of my news, which you will get first on there.
Okay, Joseph, I thank you again so much for taking the time to talk to me. And Lucky 13, I thank you again for letting me record in your venue. I will definitely provide some of your info. But most of all, I want to thank you viewers for watching. Please leave your comments below, let me know what you think. Please hit like. And if you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more of my videos, then please feel free to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell. I would love to have you. Thank you.